All right, I think we're ready to go, and hopefully more people will join us as they're able to. Well, hello everyone. I want to welcome you all to the fourth installment of the National Environmental Education Week's Greening STEM webinar series. For those of you who have tuned into an EE Week webinar before, thank you for joining us again. And for those of you just learning about EE Week for the first time, we're glad to have you here. My name is Jeff Chandler, and tonight we're getting out of the classroom to run around on the playground and race remote control cars. If you're questioning whether or not this sounds like a productive learning environment for K-12 students, then you're right to. But that is also exactly why these projects covered in tonight's webinar are such great introductions to the field of engineering. I don't know about you, but I'm excited just to hear about these projects. And I know my elementary or high school age self would have jumped at the chance to actually participate in one. We've got three really great presenters for you today, ready to talk about some of the ways that you can begin to design an environmental engineering lesson in the field or schoolyard. Just a few quick notes on the way the webinar works. Everyone's microphone has been muted to make sure we can hear the presenters clearly. Of course, we still want this to be an interactive webinar and welcome all feedback and questions. We just ask that you contribute through the chat feature on the right. So I see some people have already found that out. Hopefully you all see that. If you don't see the window on the right with the presentation or the participants and the chat window, it may be minimized, so you can find that. To make a comment or ask a question, simply type into that chat box and click send. Notice that your comment or question can go either to everyone or you can select a specific recipient. If you're having technical difficulties, please address your comments to my colleague listed in the participant list as Neef David, and we will try to help you out. We ask that you address all questions intended for our presenters to Neef host instead of the specific presenter or the group. This will make it easier for me to collect questions so that our presenters can respond to them later in the Q&A segments of the webinar. We will have time to answer these questions at the end of each segment, but you should feel free to enter questions into the chat box as they come to mind throughout the presentation. You can adjust the size of the slides you're viewing using the zoom percentage option in the bottom left of your screen. So you should be able to see two yellow arrows. If you can't see both of those, then your slide may be a little constricted. So you can say fit to window or fit to width. You can a recording of this webinar, the slides used, and a list of links and resources described will be available on our website tomorrow. Before I introduce our presenters for tonight, I want to give you a brief introduction to National Environmental Education Week, or EE Week. EE Week 2014's theme is Engineering a Sustainable World, and it is being sponsored by Samsung. It will take place April 13th to 19th this year as part of our multi-year focus on greening STEM. Each year, we focus in on one of the STEM subjects, science, technology, engineering, and math, and look at how developments in teaching practices in that field are being used to enhance environmental education. Now that we are only 1 month away from EE Week, we would love to get as many classes and schools involved as possible. We have put together a page of promotional tools that you can use to help share EE Week with your school or community. Items available include a flyer, web badge, newsletter posts, suggested social media posts, and more. If you have already begun planning an EE Week event for this year, send me an email describing the event, and your story could be featured on EE Week's website. I'm going to quickly introduce our presenters for tonight. Allison Riley is an All Saints Catholic School parent in Connecticut and was one of the co-chairs for the Smart Park project. She has helped organize several community playground projects, always with the children's enjoyment and benefit in mind. She organized a community-wide fundraiser effort to help Hurricane Katrina victims and played a key role in efforts to improve air quality in her town's public school system. Amanda Gabicki is also an ASCS parent and a co-chair of the Smart Park with a long history of community service. She has mentored children in New York City public schools through the Everybody Wins literacy program and tutored Hispanic high school students. Professionally, she is an attorney specializing in state and local tax. Susie Ellis has taught at Yampa Mountain High School in Colorado since 1997. She is Yampa's science teacher and has degrees in wildlife biology, vocational education with a focus on environmental literacy, and secondary science education. She's worked as a backcountry ranger for the U.S. Forest Service and an environmental educator for the Bureau of Land Management, designing and teaching programs for elementary students. I don't want to take up too much time here, so at this point, I'm excited to hand the presentation over to Allison and Amanda so they can tell us a little bit more about the Smart Park STEM program, or playground. Amanda and Allison, I think I'll let you take it from here. So let me just unmute you and give you presentation control, and then you'll be ready to go.
Great, thank you very much. As you can tell from our bio pitches, we not only came up with the idea of the playground, but we actually built the playground. By the end of it, we were able to drive most of the equipment and became very handy with all the power tools. So I'm going to start off by telling you a little bit about our Science and Energy Park, a brief intro on how it came to be. We transferred our children to All Saints Catholic School, which serves about approximately 500 students, grades K through 8. We realized the blacktop in the parking lot was the only place for them to play. So it then became our mission to build a playground. We thought if we built a playground, we could go after physical education PEP grants. If we made it educational, we could go after education grants. And if we incorporated alternative energy, we could even go after some green grants. The end result, we decided that if we dual purpose the space, we could learn to make play smarter. We were very blessed to pull together an amazing team. We had educators from Columbia University Graduate School. We had the lead people at Stepping Stone Children's Museum in Norwalk, Connecticut. Phenomenal architects from LTL Architects in New York, and Compan was one of our lead playground equipment providers. Just a few elements. Go ahead.
So this is Amanda. When we decided to make this playground focus on science and energy, what we wanted to do is give the children real-world experience with physical sciences, simple machines, and alternative energy sources. We carefully selected each piece of equipment to demonstrate a specific scientific concept. And all of our components in the park are mapped into the Connecticut Core Curriculum Science Standards in our diocesan curriculum. The park itself is designed to encourage creative and collaborative play. And from a design standpoint, we wanted the equipment to be fun, engaging, and educational. If you want to see how this concept is practically applied, the next slide will give you the overall layout of the park.
So if you look to the right of the slide, you'll see a rectangle, a slate rectangle, and that is our evaporation wall. When we took this photo, we were still working on a few elements. So actually on the blacktop roof above, we had a demonstration roof, which fed into a rain harvesting system which sat next to the evaporation wall, and it went into a self-winder pump that sits next to that long tub-looking thing, which is our erosion table. So what we did is we designed the park so it was modular. So while we have a few key elements there, our hope was that anybody looking at this, listening to this, could pick just one of the elements that they wanted to and replicate the park. So we made it modular. If you look at this beautiful ramp that we have, if you follow up the ramp, there's a slanted roof, and that slanted roof houses our wind turbine, our solar panels, our weather station. If you look at the railing, there's a rail that runs down the ramp about halfway down, and that is our, the kids call it the racetrack. So it's our gravity rail. In there is a dual chamber, and you're able to race your Matchbox cars down. You're able to put marbles down, and the whole idea is that the children will play on it, but then they'll revisit it, and they'll say, well, this Matchbox car is heavier, the mass is greater, it goes faster. We'll throw sand on the track, and they'll say, oh, well, there's friction. So the whole purpose of the park was first to make a safe place for the children to play, and second, for them to actually have hands-on experience with their STEM curriculum. The second picture of the park you'll see shows swing sets in the far back part. And if you notice, there are two different heights. While most elements in the park were stock, the engineering wizards at Compan specifically designed our swing bays at two different heights. And by doing so, we were able to promote lessons on pendulums that vary by frequency and period. And if you look down at the seesaw, something as simple as a seesaw that children could have lessons on balance, simple machines, or the transfer of kinetic and potential energy. When we presented the idea of education and play, Compan was immediately on board. They saw the genius of tying education, specifically STEM, into play itself.
So as you can see, each of the elements is mapped into our curriculum, and this is just one example of the spinners. You can see that the children revisit these components they see them at recess every day, and they also come out there for classroom experiments. And you can see that grade 1, the children might come out and conduct a simple experiment to see the difference in speed and direction of an object's motion. And then again in 8th grade, they'll come out and they'll see, they might do an experiment on, angular momentum or forces of an object moving in a circular path. So these children, it's kind of a layered concept, and they revisit these objects again and again and again through the classroom and also every day of play.
The next thing we want to point out is that not only do we have great play equipment on the park, but we have some really unique energy features. As you can see in the bottom picture, you can see our wind turbine. Right underneath that sits 2 of our solar panels, and the little piece that pops up is our weather station. What you can see above with the blue square and the red square is really unique. They're piezoelectric tiles. The tiles are actually prototypes, and they're not even available commercially yet. The goal was for the children to see different forms of energy. These elements every single day invite the children to experience alternative energy. They end up going out and they can see that on a windy day, the wind turbine is producing X amount of energy. And the sun, if it's not so sunny, what are we going to do for energy? Well, we can use the wind. And so to get the children to continually think. Children are a great form of energy themselves, and people have said if you could harness a child's energy, then we wouldn't have an energy problem in the world. So we thought putting these piezoelectric tiles so children could go out there, absolutely kill themselves, running and running and running, and then realize they only generated enough energy to maybe put a light bulb on for about 20 seconds. So we wanted to really get them thinking about energy. We definitely know we accomplished a lot by putting this out there, because we had a 5th grade student point at our wind turbine and say, "What's that?" So we know we definitely filled a void that was needed. We kept thinking that with the drive to make America energy independent, it was important for the students to embrace energy and its demands, and hopefully they look at becoming part of the solution.
So like we said, the Smart Park is actually a multi-purpose play space. We use it as a playground every single day for recess and after school. It's kind of a nice place for the kids to congregate and have, impromptu play dates. But we also use it as a classroom. And in addition to building this park, we've worked with our teachers to provide an inquiry-based activity guide, kind of lesson plans that they can use and go out in the park. So you can see this is 3rd graders, and they are having a lesson on the water cycle. They are painting on the wall and then, trying to figure out why their pictures disappear. And, they had some great answers. One obviously is the sun, and then the second was they looked at the material that they were painting on and they said, well, maybe it's porous. So it was very interesting to see, or maybe it's darker than a different material. So it was very interesting to see their answers and to see their minds at work and have them experience it in a real world type of way rather than in the book. The Smart Park is also we tried to make it kind of a satellite museum for stepping stones. So when we met with these, geniuses, stepping stones, these people who are absolute crazy, great imaginers, they pushed us to think of it as much more than just a playground. And so we were actually able through grants to incorporate signage in the park. And so when people come on the weekends, or even when the kids look at it at recess, they can come and they can learn just a little bit more about each element. And you can see on our erosion table, there's a sign, and this is the sign that's on the erosion table, and it kind of talks to them a little bit about erosion. In addition, there's a QR code on each sign, and you can scan the QR code, and that's kind of takes you to our website, which is kind of a living activity guide or information center for more information about erosion. So right now, if you were to scan this QR code, you would go to our website and you would see a little bit more information about erosion and some YouTube videos showing real-time erosion and at a quicker speed, actually. So it's kind of interesting for the kids to see that, and for visitors on weekends to come and learn a little bit more. In addition, I guess, when we looked at the ramp, just one thing to note, the posts on the ramp were actually spaced at a specific space apart, so that in the future, if we do partner with another park or a museum, we can actually have traveling exhibits, because our challenge is to make this park interesting to our kids for 9 years, because we have them K through 8, and interesting as much to a kindergartner as it is to an 8th grader. So we have a big challenge there, and changing things up a little bit through traveling exhibits or interchangeable exhibits is absolutely an essential part of this park. We have our first exhibit there that was sponsored by a private donor, and it's a weather station. It's an analog weather station. The kids can go out and they can measure precipitation. They can look at the barometer, the weather, and there's even a board for them to write today's weather on it, which is kind of interesting and fun for them. So, without further ado, we will say thank you very much for listening to our presentation, and we'll pass it back to Jeff.
Great. Thanks, Allison and Amanda. So if anyone has any questions for Allison or Amanda, feel free to type them into the chat box in the bottom right, and then I will relay them on to our presenters. While that's happening, Amanda and Allison, I had a question that I was going to ask to start things off. So this looks like a big undertaking to develop a whole playground. I was wondering, how many people did you have working on the construction of this, and what was the cross-section of parents, teachers, students?
Well, what we ended up doing is we had a lead construction captain, and he volunteered all of it. Every single piece of equipment that was installed was all done through volunteers, which is beautiful. Most of them were parents. We were blessed that our parent body contained a lot of very handy people that owned the equipment, the trucks, the landscapers, and I would say overall we had about 200 people with hands-on. We had some companies that donated not only money, but their workforce to us. The Connecticut rugby team came in.
Yeah, the Connecticut Yankees rugby team came in. PricewaterhouseCoopers actually donated a fair amount of money. In addition, they sent 2 separate crews on 2 separate days for full days to come and help us construct the ramp and install some of the equipment there, which is hugely helpful.
So it's 10,000 square feet. It was we started on July 19th. We finished right before school started. It was about a 6-week project. 2 weeks was full out with volunteers and shifts, and then the remaining 4 weeks we probably had 10 people in the morning, 10 different people at night, hands-on. And like I said in the beginning, we actually learned how to drive the trucks.
Yeah, so we did a
lot more than we thought we would have to, but it's well worth it.
Wow. Well, congratulations on the whole completion and everything. It looks like it turned out to be a huge success. So great job. We had a question come in from Lori, who was asking if you could explain a little bit more about how those piezoelectric tiles work, where the kids run and generate energy.
Yes, what we were trying to find was an energy feature that the children themselves could generate the energy, because of that famous, if we could only harness children's energy. And Columbia University Graduate School actually was developing a rope feature where you climb on the rope and it would absorb energy. That's how we tied into Columbia. That project never went off, so we ended up searching the internet and coming across with this company called Powerlead. And her hope was to actually install these tiles in like Grand Central Station or really busy airports or under busy roads.
In Chicago, I think under some of the roads there installed it.
So she was very generous and said that because this is outdoors in New England where the temperatures are, minus 20. So we actually, we were her prototype. And so we installed them out here. It's compression. The way the piezoelectricity works is when the children step on them, they compress, and I don't know all the technical parts, but the transfer of energy, you have to look into Powerlead's website. But it actually makes, as you can look on these little V shapes, that the little lights light up. And so they can actually see themselves generating the energy. It's really unique because the children, that we were smart, we put that in the shady area of the school, so they actually can see the lights shine. But it's great. If you look up Powerlead, you'll see that she's making a real effort at putting these commercially out there.
That's great. That's such a cool idea. I'm sure the kids love it, too, to see that direct response of the energy they're creating. I think as those become more available, I think we're going to see that catch on and appear in more schools. That's very cool. We had a question coming. Oh, sorry, go ahead.
I was going to say, the hope with this park was that we didn't want anyone to have to reinvent the wheel. So everything that your viewers are looking at, we will help them with. We'll give them any information on where we got our supplies, or the lessons that we tied into for STEM. We were fortunate enough to find an educational playground in Massachusetts and learn a lot from that. We haven't been able to find anything quite like this with the energy features, and Stepping Stones Museum, by pushing us to make it as educational as it is, has been phenomenal. And just watching the children learn off of it is crazy. You know, you talk to someone, a child who's just on a spinner, and before they used to get off thinking, wow, you know, I'm kind of dizzy. Now they get off it thinking, well, if I let the beanbag go, what trajectory path is it going to go on and why? And then they can, you know, tie it into learning about the orbit and space. It's very cool.
That's very cool. And just, I mean, from playing on the playground like this, do you reckon, or do your kids still go here? I forget if you mentioned.
Yes.
Okay. So when they come back and tell you about something they learned in school, can you tell a difference if they've learned it on the playground or in a classroom? Is there a difference in kind of the way they tell the story?
Oh, there's an enthusiasm for sure. I was actually at the classroom lesson when they taught the water cycle lesson out in the park. It was amazing to watch them. They loved it. They ran all around. They were so active, and they journaled their thoughts. It was great.
That's very cool. We've had a couple of questions come in, and anyone feel free to submit questions. We have a couple more minutes to keep going before we move on with the presentation. But we had one earlier. Cara asks, as I'm sure a couple teachers would wonder, is obviously you had the donations, which help out with the project of materials or monetary, but can you sort of estimate maybe what a total cost of a project like this, or maybe if you didn't have all the elements, but maybe having 3 of these elements, what a total cost might be estimate for building something like this?
Well, if you think of the total cost of the value of the playground, I think it would be about a $500,000 playground. But we were able to get donated labor, and you know, we were able to get discounts on some items, and we were able to get a lot of material donations. So our total cost was right around $200,000, and then we had a maintenance fund of I think $10,000, something like that. So we had to, or 20, maybe it was 20,000. We had a 10% maintenance fund. So that was our outlay and our cost. However, you could take one of the spinners and take all our lesson plans for, you know, angular momentum and all, you know, that go with it, and you would have, you know, something that your kids could go out and have a lesson on. So there's no cost. I mean, we could give you the cost of different various items for it if you want to email us. If you wanted just to do the swing bay, if you wanted to do, you know, 2 or 3 items, 2 simple machines or something like that. That's why we did it modular, because we know not every community is as fortunate as we are, and we know that they don't have as much land as we do. So, you know, it's nice to, or maybe they have more, you know, and they can do even more than we did, but it's nice to have it be in pieces in a modular way so that anyone can replicate a portion of it or all of it.
Yep. Yeah, I think so. Hopefully that answers the question. I think definitely the benefit of how much enthusiasm the kids get when they're using this equipment to learn. And I mean, especially the wind generator, solar panels, piezoelectric tiles, those things are giving back to the school too. So yeah, I think it definitely sounds like a worthwhile investment to me. So we had a question come in from Kay. Were the students able to help with any of the preparation?
Yes, they helped with a ton. The students actually, we had a design day in the beginning. So this park is actually in part imagined by the students themselves. We had a designer come in, and every student drew a picture of what they thought their perfect science and energy park would be. And we took a lot of those to LTL with us, and LTL architects, and they incorporated a lot of the ideas. It was great. They hung the pictures up in their walls, so they were really part of the original design process. And then as far as, you know, as far as building the park, as far as raising money, they were able to do can and bottle drives all year long. And they did, one of our students, Allison's son, won a grant through Barnum and Bailey Circus for an effort that he did to raise money for the park, a recycling effort. So yes, the kids were very involved in it, and they actually did come and they were able to do some of the assembly. It was obviously a construction site for a while, but they were able to do some of the assembly, and they do come and they help us mulch it when we need to mulch it.
So they help with the daily maintenance of the park, but as far as like the hands-on, we weren't allowed to have any children on site for that part, even though you see my son on one of the trucks in the picture with me. But, you know, it was great for the children because they really felt very
Oh, that's my son.
They really felt very involved, and they look at it like it's their park. And I think the best part about it was they saw the parents, show up night after night and hands-on, and the kids would come by and see what, when you put your mind to something, what can be done, and the fact that they have something that they had never seen before. It's just, Mandy and I love the excitement of it. When we drop the kids off, she drops them off in the morning, I pick them up in the afternoon, and it's just, it's been there for 2 years now, and the excitement the children have is still every day. I picked up Mandy's son yesterday, and it was sunny, and he wanted to go in the park, and I couldn't. So, but we had errands to do, but it's just that excitement is still there. And the best part is when they come home and they say, oh, I was on the park, I learned this today. Or when we walk through the school and some little child grabs us and tells us like a big science word, which, it's just amazing to see that. And they don't forget those lessons. They actually, when they're in a classroom and they're reading about centrifugal force, and then when they're on a spinner and they feel it, I mean, it's night and day to the ability to learn. And what I wanted to say earlier was that we were listening to some educators talk about taking away recess from children because, if you spent more time in the class, chances are, they learn more. And our whole point is we don't feel that that's the case. We feel that if you take children outside and they do the hands-on play, you just make play smarter. That's the solution.
I think that makes a lot of sense. I love the part you said about, when students are even just playing on the playground with other students, a teacher doesn't even need to be there after that first lesson. They start taking control and taking that leadership position of wanting to tell what they've learned about what's going on. That's great.
So the child fastly learns that the heavy matchbox car will win the race
next
time. It's a fast.
That's great. Well, in order to keep moving so that we make sure we have time for Susie's presentation, I think we'll move on now, but please, if you have any questions or further questions for Allison or Amanda, go ahead and type them into the chat box or save them for the end, and if we have time, we'll come back to it, or you can always email them, and I'll bring this contact information up at the end also so that you can have it available then. So, Allison and Amanda, thank you very much. I'm going to mute you now so we can switch over to Susie. So Susie, if you give me a second, I will unmute you and then give you control, and we'll be all set. So,
okay, thanks.
So just a second while I give you control.
All right.
Yeah.
Let me know when I'm in control.
Yeah, so we're going to figure that out. All right, there we go. It should be now.
Perfect. Thanks so much. Yeah, my name's Susie Ellis, and I'm a teacher at Yampa Mountain High School, which is in western Colorado, in a town called Glenwood Springs. Yampa is a public alternative high school, and we serve students from 4 different school districts who, some of it's dropout recovery, some of it is kids who just don't like a traditional educational lifestyle, sitting in their desks and following directions. So we get a lot of those kids who want to take their own direction. And so I've taught there, this is my 17th year, and I'm the only science teacher. We have 100 students, grades 9 through 12, so our classes are mixed grade levels. And then we also have a teen parent program with pregnant and parenting teenagers in daycare. So we have about 30 students in that program. So I'm the science teacher, and my big focus all these years has been environmental literacy and trying to incorporate that throughout life, physical, and earth science. And so I've taught a bunch of different classes about focusing on solar and renewable. My students have learned about solar through hands-on school-based projects. A couple of them went to a design install solar class. We put solar panels. We've got 4 kilowatts of solar that they helped install on the school after taking some classes. But what I found is that there aren't that many programs really STEM-based at the high school level that incorporate alternative energy. So there's lots of middle school and elementary school programs available, I think. This is a picture from the Junior Solar Sprint competition held in Denver last May, sponsored by the National Renewable Energy Lab. So there's a lot of programs out there for teachers to find that will give students a basic understanding of solar and a little bit of engineering experience. And you can tailor those. This is one of our moms who we did a solar sprint competition at school. We kind of changed the rules a little bit. because no one wants to follow the exact guidelines at my school. And so the kids were able to design their own cars using whatever materials they could scrounge. And so this is one of the cars. But when we found out about solar rollers, these are the 4 cars from last year's competition, solar rollers was designed by a fellow named Noah Davis, who was working for a local nonprofit called Solar Energy International, and he ran their solar in the schools program. He's since left there and started his own group, Energetics Ed, that focuses on these solar roller cars. And he was looking for a way to combine solar design with a STEM focus at the high school level so that, we could really find a way to challenge high school students to design, build, race these solar-powered RC cars, and really find some links between engineering and thinking about solutions to our climate and energy issues on the planet. So these cars, we had 3 different high school level teams last year, and then Noah built his own car with a group of middle school kids. And we raced them as a demonstration event in Denver at the Solar Sprint competition. So here's the challenge. There's all kinds of engineering classes in school. There's robotics, there's all that. But, to learn how to read a schematic diagram like this and turn it into a vehicle that moves is an amazing challenge. So students taking this class or participating in the program have learned how to read and follow complex instructions. They've had to do all kinds of problem solving, working together as a team to find part number 5361 in multiple bags of parts. They've learned how to figure out how to collaborate. They've learned which one is a leader. But the students who took my class last year, I had four kids who participated, and they weren't our high-achieving engineering focus going off to post-secondary education students. Really, I kept calling them Team SPED because all 4 of them had IEPs, and so they were all some kind of special education kids, but they were fascinated by RC cars, and they kind of ran it. It's a good thing because I don't know anything about RC cars. I know about solar, but not RC cars, but I've learned more than I knew then, and we had Noah to work with, but really the kids ran it. So, this is our classroom. It doesn't look very fancy. We don't have a shop. We do have a drill press, and they're always amazed when we pull it out to use it, but that's about it. I bring tools in from home. I have a toolbox at school, and they'll work away for an hour on this, and at the end go, well, should we just keep going? Why should we stop? It took an entire class period to assemble this axle twice, because the first time things were on in the wrong direction. It was go back to the beginning, find the bottle of spray Tri-Flow, and maybe everything will fit better if you lubricate it. So there's problem solving at every step of the way. Last year we had to design our chassis. We had a kit car that we used, and we're using the same kit this year, but we had to modify the chassis a little bit to fit the solar panels on top, the array. And we were fortunate enough at that time to have a company in town called Fiber Forge who worked specifically with carbon fiber. And so we had to arrange a little field trip, and we went there, and they were happy to show us all the process that they use to make flat sheets of carbon fiber. And at the end, they gave us a large sheet of carbon fiber, which was great because it was stiff, it's light, and it provided its own little engineering challenges. So the team came up with a design for their chassis. They had to figure out the best way to cut it. Again, we don't have a shop, so they clamped it to a picnic table outside the school on a sunny day. And they all took turns cutting the parts they had to cut. The outside frame that goes around it there, that perimeter, is actually, they came up with this great idea because the Fiber Forge had given us some C channel, and they cut it in, but it wasn't wide enough, or there wasn't enough material to go all the way around, so they cut it in half lengthwise to make an L-shaped channel to support our solar array. So all kinds of problem solving going on with that. So here's the team. And it's just kind of interesting when I look at them because from left to right, they all had their own educational challenges that were really met in this project. The fellow on the left he graduated last year. Until this project, he never really spoke in what we called his big boy voice. He was very quiet, an incredibly brilliant kid, but he just didn't interact, and he became the team leader. This year, he comes in one afternoon a week to work with the team, and I could tell everyone what to do all for the hour, and they won't do it. And if he comes in the door, they work for an hour. They'd work for 2 hours with him, just standing there giving them directions. So that was an incredible learning experience. They learned how to solder. This is soldering the solar array. So they had to build their own array using individual solar cells and learning about how you wire things and solder them in series to increase the volts for this particular purpose. And he's soldering wafers that are as thin as potato chips. So you learn a lot of patience, and you also learn to be careful, and you learn that things break, as they did a few times. So you learn to have extras. But at the end, it looks like they made it look easy. So they had to solder the array on top of a piece of glass, and then we had to figure out how we were going to mount it onto some foam. And so it's mounted onto half-inch rigid foam, and we had to do a whole bunch of research about the best way to mount it on that foam so that it would stick. And we looked at all kinds of epoxies and decided that they would affect the solar cells or they might affect the foam. And eventually, we all realized we could just use white glue and thin it, and it just had to stick for a little while so that we could turn it over. So that's what we did. Then we covered it. I don't have a slide, but once we had the array mounted, we covered it with a shrink wrap. And that worked pretty well. We found out at the beginning of this year that shrink wrap actually reflects enough sunlight that it maybe hurt our project a little bit because we weren't getting as much solar gain as we wanted for battery charging. So this year we're trying another product. We're trying something called Schoolyard that's made by Dow Chemical. And the great thing about this project is you can call companies like Dow and explain what we're doing, and suddenly there's a sample coming our way, so we'll get to figure out how to apply that. They had to learn how to cut foam, which sounds quite simple, but there's actually a trick to cutting this epifoam. And, we had to pull out the carving knife that we use at school for carving turkeys at Thanksgiving and learn how to carve the bumpers, because each car needed to have bumpers for when they hit the other car. We had one student who'd been racing RC cars all his life, and so he became our automatic driver. In fact, we're going to have to get him back this year to teach the rest of us how to drive, because really he ran the show. But he was an incredible driver, and all the teams just kept looking at him, being impressed with what he knew how to do. Driving an RC car is quite a trick to do it efficiently, and so he had it down to a science. We had a pit crew during the race because everyone's cars broke partway through. Ours, we had an issue with one of the wheels, so they had to put a new wheel on and find all the parts and put it back together. One of the other teams had one of their gears malfunction, and while they were trying to fix it, they had to mess up something else. So there was a considerable amount of fussing and fixing that went on during the 1 hour. So the team with the least fussing and fixing got the most laps. So we came in second on that. We even had our track designer. This student is also on the team again this year, and really his whole goal was to design some wild track. And this year, hopefully, he'll get a little better chance. Last year, he ended up it was an oval track on a parking lot. But he had a good time walking around with his clipboard and really feeling like he was part of the team. He even made his own name tag, so it was perfect. But these are the pioneers, the first ones who have been involved in the project. There were students from Colorado Rocky Mountain School, which is a private school in our area. Aspen High School had a team, and then we had our team. And you know, I kind of look at this picture, and the one thing that stands out to me is just how varied they all are, except for the gender inequity. And so I'm hoping in the next few years that we could probably solve that a little bit and get more girls on the team. This year there are 10 teams participating, and it's going to be a local event. And the hope is through Energetics Ed, which is the nonprofit that is sponsoring this activity, is that they'll grow and start these teams throughout the country and have regional competitions, national competitions. There's been a little bit more added. Right now, the way it's scored is that, or last year we had the most laps won, and so we came in second. Aspen came in first because their car didn't break. But this year we've added some other competitions to it. There's a 20 questions part where students are actually going to have to be experts on what they built. So they're going to have to answer a variety of questions on how solar works, how their array works, why they chose certain design features. There'll also be an all-out speed competition. So it's adding a little bit more to it, a little more engineering concept. And then really the long-term effect of this project is looking at trying to just spark kids' imaginations and get them to look at solar as a real energy source that can make some difference on the planet in the future. You know, we just want one kid who's going to look and go, well, I don't know why we do it that way. We should do it this way. And really look at some creative solutions to some of our world's energy and climate issues.
That's great. Such a great presentation, Susie. Thank you so much. So I want to open it up to questions again, if anyone has a question for Susie. And we actually had one come in, but I think you answered it right at the end there. She was asking sort of whether speed was the only aspect of competition and grading for these cars, or whether there were other ones. But I think you talked about some of the engineering comes into play and how that makes a difference. And also,
I didn't mention, they all start out with, these have batteries. And so when you start out, the battery, we do a fully charged battery. So, and then that's it. The battery has to run totally off of solar. Last year it was kind of cloudy, so we started out with batteries we charged with plug-in chargers, and then they had to run around and around and around for an hour. And really the car in this picture, the second from the left car, which was Aspen's car, used this Dow chemical sealer over the top, and their solar kept going. Our car we were just about out of battery by the end. It was barely moving along, so it was pretty, you could really tell a difference between efficiency.
That's great. We've had a couple questions come in. From Mike, can you say the name of the design kit again?
Well, it's being run through a nonprofit called Energetics Ed, and I think there'll be a website at the end of this. Is there?
Yep. Yeah, that's right.
So, but you can go online and they have a website, and it's just starting. So all inquiries are certainly welcome. Yeah,
we'll show the website at the end so that people can go there and learn more about this project and how to start one of your own. And actually, while we're talking about that website, I was looking through the information on there, and I stole a quote from it that I wanted to bring up because I thought it was great. It says, "Students start off building a solar-powered RC car and wind up building their lifelong love of learning as part of a team." And I was wondering if you've had, I think you mentioned this briefly, but have you had students that have participated in this project one year come back and are so excited still that they tell you they've got new ideas for how to improve the car and new ideas for a different type of energy-efficient car or a different race or competition that they want to do?
Yeah, this year, last year was the first year, and we had 4 students on the team. And this year we have, again, 4 students who are interested in the project, and 2 of them are returning from last year. And 2 of last year's team graduated. But they, when they graduated, we do a portfolio presentation as part of their graduation event, and both of those kids had to get up, and then this is the project they talked about. Whatever else they did for the last 4 years actually didn't matter compared to this. And then we have 2 kids again, the 2 kids who came back to work on it again this year are doing things differently than they did last year. You know, they're adding ideas. They know what worked and they know what didn't work.
Cool. That's going to be fun to see the growth in ideas and their approach to the project year after year. We have actually some people have been sharing resources that they like that are related, which is great. If you'd like to share something related with everyone, you can direct the comment to everyone. Or the website. Thank you. I think John shared the Energetics Ed website there, which is great. And we'll post it at the end also. We had a question come in from Lori. Was this an after-school enrichment or club, or did this happen during the school day? How did you fit it in with sort of class time?
It's a regular class. We're fairly flexible. You know, as a small alternative school, I teach. Last year, actually, it was scheduled as a class, but it was during a time when I had another class, so sometimes I'd run back and forth between the rooms. Mostly I just trusted that they would get it done, and it was a good thing that they did. This year, it's scheduled as a regular class time, and so I just meet with those 4 kids, which is I feel kind of fortunate to have a schedule like that. But it's sandwiched in. It's just yet another prep out of the week, put it that way.
Yeah, and it sounds like the sort of thing that kids would, be very excited to do as an after-school program, or stay after a little bit to work on these cars, or race them after school, or meet up outside of class too. It's got that much spark to it.
And I think the Aspen team, I think they work after school on it. I think it's part of a robotics program that they have, but I'm not entirely sure.
We had a question come in from Jen, asking if you can think of a way that this project might be modified for elementary students.
It's pretty high level because of some of the engineering and soldering involved, but I think you could do the same thing if you were using some of the Junior Solar Sprint panels that are, they make a kit that you can buy online for the Junior Solar Sprint. You can go to the National Renewable Energy Lab, the NREL site, and get some info about that. And then you could, I've done that with the Solar Sprint cars where we've had the challenge has been to be the fastest car, and there's a lot of engineering with that, just to design a small chassis and glue your panel to the top and look at sun angle, orientation, the wheels, the gearing. Just teaching about gearing for most high school, middle, or elementary school kids is pretty entertaining, because very few people think about how motors and gears work, and and especially with the smaller cars, whether you're putting gears for speed or for power, and that for the little teeny motors that you use in the Solar Sprint cars, there's definitely a trade-off between speed and power, and at a certain point, nothing works. So it's a great little engineering thing, and elementary kids could do that easily.
Yeah, I think that's a good solution, and maybe I'll get the information for the Junior Solar Panel afterwards, and we can put that available for people if they want to follow through on that part of the project.
Sure.
Let's see, so we've got some more resources coming through. People are sharing links, which is great. So any other questions, feel free to submit them. Otherwise, you can contact Susie after the presentation or another time, or contact me, and I can relay a question onto her again. But I think for now, that covers, it sounds like, most of the questions. So we can move on to kind of wrap up the presentation. But Susie, thank you so much for that presentation. That was great.
Sure.
So I'm going to mute you now and take control back. Yep. All right. So thank you again to all 3 of our presenters, Allison, Amanda, and Susie. You've all done a great job, and we really appreciate the time you took to show us how much fun an environmental engineering lesson can be. I want to remind everyone that a video and audio recording of this webinar will be archived on our website at eeweek.org/webinars, along with a PDF version of the slide presentation and any resources mentioned and shared. So please check back later tomorrow for that, and feel free to pass the link along to anyone else you think might be interested. Skipped ahead. Sorry about that. Also, keep in mind our final scheduled Greening STEM webinar leading up to EE Week on the Grand Green Challenges for Engineering with the National Academy of Engineering. We also are planning 2 more sessions for around the time of EE Week to hear directly from engineers at NASA and Samsung, so definitely stay tuned for more information on that. Now that you have all registered for EE Week, you have access to future webinars and will not need to register again, and we will post more details about the April 9th webinar soon, so stay tuned for that. While visiting the archived webinar on our newly redesigned website, please browse around if you haven't already to see what new features and resources we've been adding, and stay tuned as we continue to replenish the pages with new blog posts, toolkits, graphics, and updates about EE Week 2014. So with that, I'll put up contact information in the websites, and then we'll have more, obviously, on the website under the archived page tomorrow, along with an article about the STEM playground that you can read for more information. But thank you to everyone who tuned into the webinar, and thank you once again to our presenters. My contact information is also up here. If you'd like to ask any questions about EE Week, I'd be happy to answer them. Please visit the websites for more information related to these great projects, because there is still so much fascinating information to learn. I will be sending out a survey and an email tomorrow along with a link to the archived webinar and related materials, and we'd really appreciate it if you took a minute just to answer a few quick questions so that we can continue to improve our webinars leading up to EE Week and beyond. So thanks again, everyone. I'll leave this slide up for a bit, but I hope you enjoyed the presentations and have a great night.